Hello, welcome to Talking with Trish. Today, my guest is Michael Pickle, the writer and director and producer of The Dead Place, which had its premiere last night. It premiered on Bloodstream TV at the beginning of this month. And I know it's been a really long journey getting this movie out. How does it feel for it to not only finally be out for people to see, but to see how much of a positive reception it's gotten?
That's definitely a very cathartic experience because we went through so much to make it, and I've been through so much in my career since I first thought of the idea. So it all coming together and it being received like I dreamed it would, it feels great. And especially it made on such a low budget. It's only $150,000 budget.
That's
So
crazy.
I was sure that the critics wouldn't look past that. I thought they would for sure they would pick it apart because of the budget, but no, almost all the
Right.
critics looked right past the budget, and they're really loving the story. The whole crowd that came last night for the theatrical premiere loved it. It's a really great experience.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that the turnout and everything was nice. That was so awesome. My first question, I think, is how did David Howard Thornton get involved in this project?
Well, I had a podcast at the time when I first started talking to him. It's called Ghostman Rivera's Horror Show Podcast. So me and my fellow producer would just talk horror movies, and we started interviewing people like around COVID. So we started doing Zoom interviews. So we started getting a lot more interviews with different stars and stuff and filmmakers. So he was nice enough to come on, even though we'd had a small following. We hadn't been around that long. So he was nice enough to come on. And then while we were on talking to him, and he said that he had this whole theater background, and it just popped in my head. I just imagined him as the character at that moment. The moment I heard that he had such an extensive background with voices and with theater, I knew we had our new kid.
I know that honestly was like the most brilliant piece of casting. That's what I really love about David is that even when he is playing a very villainous character, it's very kind of comedic in a way. He's very good with comedy and he's very kind of over the top. I love him as an actor. I always joke that like I want to be like him when I grow up, but I'm like 36. But that's like I love him as an actor. So I loved him being in that movie. Um, was horror always a favorite genre of yours? I know that like most of the projects that you've been involved in have been involved in horror in some way. Have you always loved horror?
Well, I've always been a cinephile. I've always loved all types of movies. There was a certain time in my life where romantic comedies were my favorite genre, but I've always dipped into horror my whole life. I've always been more into like the paranormal and horror things rather than horror movies. Because
Right.
as a kid, horror movies never scared me. But then when I was about 27 years old and I watched the Blair Witch Project,
Oh,
that's the first movie that ever scared me because I thought it was
right.
real when I first went to see it. So after that, when I became a filmmaker, I'm like, there's a lot of filmmakers out there telling a lot of different stories. I need to pick a lane. I need to pick a genre that I could master, that I could dive into and really get to the meat of it. And horror was the best because my creativity, my poetry has always come from horror. My writing had always come from horror, even when I wasn't into horror movies as much. So it just seemed natural for when I started filmmaking that the stories I come up with are horror. And they have a lot of emotion and drama to them too. But it's always seeped in horror because I just love the battle between good and evil and just showing evil in all its different forms and diving into it in a psychological way instead of just throwing a bunch of horror tropes on screen.
Right. And I completely agree with all of that. I think horror still kind of to this day, I feel like it's not gotten as bad of a rep as it has in the past, but people just kind of throw it off as like a very unserious or whatever genre. But there's been so many different horror movies I can think of that have had real like emotional depth to them. You know, it's not just a bunch of blood and guts. Like sometimes there is a lot more to that. And one of the things I noticed about The Dead Place that really got me was bullying the Isaac goes through because um as someone who was bullied a lot as a child, um all of the bullies that his group of bullies in the movie gave me like nom flashbacks. Like I just it was so hard for me to get through, but I liked that there was kind of that theme running through the whole movie of that if he wasn't being bullied at school, it's like the new kid was bullying him. This demon won't leave him alone. Like he doesn't, no matter what he doesn't get a moment of peace. And I wonder if it was your intent for the demon or whatever you would call the voice that is trying to get inside him, if the reason that he picked Isaac was because he was in a vulnerable state because of the bullying that he was going through.
Well, that's one of the reasons, but the main reason he chose Isaac is because he already has this ability to see dead people. So he can see, once he finds this host in Isaac, he sees that Isaac is a person who uh, attracts these spirits. So he figures, if I could possess this kid, then all these souls will be drawn to me, and he could devour them as he. So he sees it as a way to gain more power and more souls and to kill more people because he has a bloodlust.
Right. And I know that you were obviously planning on doing a part two and a part three, and you can't like spoil anything for me, but I just hope that Isaac gets a break because that poor kid, he's going through it in this movie. But was I know that the whole story, the reason that you started writing The Dead Place in the first place was because of a kind of like paranormal experience that you had. Was there any other thing that influenced the story? Any other kind of horror media, or was it just a lot of things put together?
It was a lot of things put together because I felt like I was a storyteller already because I've always been a poet, and then I was a singer in a progressive metal band, and I would do little short films to go along with our music and stuff. So I'd always been a storyteller, so it just seemed to be an extension of my storytelling.
Awesome, awesome. I don't know if this is too hard of a question. What are some of your favorite horror films, do you think? And these can be recent, old, whatever.
Well, there was one that inspired me right when I got into the business around 2009, 2010. This movie called Plague Town. It's written and
Oh,
directed by David Gregory. Uh, he's the owner of Severn Films,
oh,
and it's so low budget, and the low budget shows here and there, just like on a Dead Place, but it has so much imagination and it's so deeply scary while having a low budget, and I was always really impressed with that, with the atmosphere they were able to achieve on that. So that's one of my favorite low budget indie horror films. And then of course my two of my favorites are Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist.
oh,
And
nice.
and I want to be a filmmaker that's a mixture of those. That's a filmmaker that's not afraid to get brutal or
Right,
or or rough, but also likes to be more psychological and more drama elements. So I like to marry the kind of exploitation elements with psychological and drama elements because those two things are too often separated. You know,
right.
either a movie is really grim and brutal, or it's really thoughtful and psychological. So I like to put those together. I've always loved mixing genres from the beginning. So I love to mix slasher tropes with demonic tropes with possession. The Dead Place is a possession film, but it never feels like a possession film.
Right. It's such a different mixture of genres. And I know that you said somebody said that they thought it felt like it was like a mixture of The Sixth Sense and The Breakfast Club,
Yes.
which which I mean, I honestly think is true. It reminded me so much, and I remember saying this online, of I don't know why. I'm not sure what about it did. I don't know if it's the fact that it was a lower budget film or if, the protagonist was this younger teenager, but it reminded me of so many different like horror genre shows that I grew up watching, especially the fact that it kind of leaves off on a cliffhanger like that. and like you want more, and we are getting more. Fingers crossed, we better be getting more because
Yeah.
I want to see what happens. But I really, something about that was very endearing, and the mixture of the genres I really appreciated. And I think more people need to do that. And I think the reason why a lot of people um gather towards a lot of like low budget horror is because of, if you're limited on budget, it really kind of helps you stretch your other muscles. It helps you to be more creative because sometimes you don't have a choice because you have a limited budget. So you're like, what can I do? One of the things that I really liked in The Dead Place, which I thought was such an interesting visual, was the elongated like monster mouth that
Yeah.
happens. Like, where did the idea for that come from?
Well, that came from the original idea of the paranormal experience that happened to me. So
Oh,
when I was in bed that next morning after visiting that haunted asylum, there were demons there in bed with me. And each time I would close my eyes, it would be like my eyelids were clear. Basically, I'd close my eyes and I'd still see them screaming in front of my face. So so it felt like it was inside me at the time when it was happening. It was almost like I was being manipulated to feel like it was inside me. But later on, thinking back on it, it felt like these thoughts were outside invading my head. So I felt like, did something get in my head and show me? Was it showing? Were those demons even real? I had a feeling like I was being shown the most frightening being that I could imagine in my head. So it felt like I was being manipulated by evil and I was being shown something that would be the most optimal scary and frightening image. So then I thought, what if this demon is manipulating him and it wants to show him the most frightening things it possibly can. So that's when I thought of, we're gonna show him big elongated jaws. We're gonna show, like, I don't know if you noticed, but it's a bit of a spoiler. But in the scene with the dad, with what happens to the dad,
right.
there's a big nasty uh gouge out of his face, a big hole in his face. Well,
I
that's
did.
fake.
Oh,
It's being shown to him. So that's the evil of this entity. So he wants to so deeply frighten Isaac that it wasn't enough just to kill his dad in front of him.
right.
He had to show him something even more disturbing. So as you notice, when Isaac lays on his dad's chest, then that wound slowly disappears.
I did
Because
not. I didn't even notice that. I'm gonna have to watch it again because I totally didn't put that together the first time around.
so it was just this concept of a lot of what he's seeing, the most scary stuff isn't necessarily real. So you never know what he's seeing is real or not. Is that a real evil being in front of him, or is he being shown the scariest thing that demon could conjure?
That is terrifying. That's a terrifying experience. Like was making the story, like writing everything down and making the story and making it into a movie, like a kind of a cathartic feeling from that experience because I I don't know if I could handle an experience like that. I would have to go somewhere far away. First of all, if any I you were brave to go any kind of ghost hunting because I'm not a superstitious person. I'm a little stitious. Like I I'm kind of like careful. I don't really know what's real or what's not, but I feel like I don't ever want to go where I think ghosts could be at because I don't want any kind of thing happen to me because if anything ever haunts me, if anything ever follows me on, I'm burning the house down and leaving. Like I'm not there's not I couldn't handle that.
Well,
But
I have this thing in me that I've always had since I was a little kid. It might be a mental defect, but it causes me to go into these situations because when I'm in a situation, whether it's a, a physical scare or a mental scare, the moment I feel fear, I go towards what I'm scared of. So like
See,
when we went to the asylum that night, we went into the basement and it was a sealed stone basement, no windows or anything. It was completely sealed. And we opened the door and went to go down in the basement, and there's this vicious growling just echoing through the basement. You can see it on a YouTube video. I have it on a YouTube video.
oh my God.
Was this vicious screaming and growling coming from the bottom. My first instinct is just go down the stairs and see what's down there growling. I don't
You
even know
don't
why I
you
did it.
don't do that. You don't
Yeah.
follow the noise. See, that's what the people do in horror movies and they die. You would be the first person that died in a horror movie
Yeah.
because you're like, "What's that?" I mean, I almost think that's like a admirable quality to have because like you want to know what's happening. Like you want to know more about stuff. I want to get as far away from whatever it is as possible.
I think what first connected me to the paranormal and might be the reason that I go toward the fear is because I was introduced to the paranormal when I was a very young age because my mother always told me the story about she lost her father when I was in her stomach still. So after she lost her father, she was crying day and night. She just couldn't get over it. She was inconsolable. So then she said one night she was just awake crying in her bed, and my grandpa appears in the doorway. And she said his apparition just filled the whole doorway. And she just looked at him, and she didn't even know she was going to have a boy. And he looked down at her and he said, I want you to stop crying. I'm in a good place. And pointed at her stomach. And he said, you worry about the little guy right there. So I'd
Oh my
always
God.
felt that connection. Like, did my grandpa come from the afterlife to save me? So I've always felt the deep need to prove that something was out there. So I know that that was real. I think that that's part of why I go toward that fear.
That is oh, that's honestly going to make me cry. That's beautiful. But are you ever planning on doing any more ghost hunting anytime soon?
Yeah, I actually just connected with someone who's a medium and a witch.
Oh,
So, and she wants to do some paranormal investigating with me. So, I'm thinking about getting back into it again. Now, after this experience happened, this was around 2007, 2008.
right.
Right after it happened, it was a good 2 years where I was extremely afraid to go in anywhere that was supposed to be haunted.
I don't
But
blame you. Yeah.
I think as I worked through it using the script, really, because the more I wrote on the script, the more invested I came in the paranormal again, and the more interested I became in it again.
Right. Yeah, it was like a sort of a therapeutic thing to like get all of that out there. Where do you think, where are some places that you would like to visit specifically?
Well, my favorite place is Ventura, California. If you go to downtown Ventura, I had this experience when I first moved to California, and some friends were taking me up to Ventura because they thought I would like it. It has a really cool overlook, kind of where you can get on top of a mountain and look down over the city. So they were taking me, and I didn't even realize we had just got inside the city limits, and I felt this energy hit me, and I looked at my friend and said, "Do you feel that? I feel like a heaviness in my chest. I feel like something's in the air." She said, "That's weird that you say that because we just entered Ventura, and it's weird that you had that feeling." So when I got there, I had such a feeling of peace and of it was of not being alone, like there were spirits around, but it felt like a peaceful feeling, and I fell in love with that feeling, and I fell in love with the place. And then later on I found out there's 11 haunted places just in the downtown area. So
Wow.
I went to the Bella Maggiore Inn. So I went there with my wife and my son, and we went into the room where this hooker was supposed to have killed herself in the room back in the 30s. So we went and stayed in that room, and they said, Be careful because Sylvia plays tricks with our guests."
Oh,
So we said, okay. So we went up to the room and we took all of our stuff out, took all of our luggage out. I even went to the bathroom and everything. And then we went down to to the car to get the rest of the stuff. We came back in. There was a shower. Somebody had taken a shower in the bathroom. The mirror was fogged up. There was a towel laid down on the floor with wet footprints on it. We went straight downstairs and we said, We just got in our room and somebody went in there, took a shower. Oh, that's Sylvia. That's Sylvia again playing tricks.
Sylvia needs to calm down. Sylvia would
Yeah.
scare the hell out of me if I did that. Oh my God. But that's incredible. And definitely if you have got to document whenever you go back for ghost hunting, and
Oh yeah.
that's absolutely incredible. And I cannot wait to see what happens um in this journey with this film. I know it just keeps getting great reviews. I haven't heard anything negative about this, like knock on wood. And
Yeah.
but it's so insane how long it took for this to come out. And now that it's out, it's just great review after great review. And I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited to see the next parts of this because I know it is a big story that you split up into three parts. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. It is a brilliant film, and I'm so sorry to have to cut this short today, but I am so happy that I got to talk to you.
Thank you for interviewing me. It's been fun.
But you have a good rest of the day and good evening, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Thank you so much.